Because I don't participate in the content creator crowdfunding ecosystem, this rarely happens, but this review is coming out during a crowdfunding campaign just by happenstance for a second edition and expansion of Catharsis. So if this review interests you, check out Catharsis on GameFound, links in the description. This game is from the sort of small publisher that I think crowdfunding was initially created for. How deep of a game do you think Yahtzee mechanisms can support? Yahtzee is about as luck-based as games get. Let's say Vengeance Roll and Fight, one of my favorite games, is fast-paced and lighter weight, also based on Yahtzee. But Under Falling Skies, another favorite game, which uses a very modified Yahtzee-ish system, is a real brain burner, like famously. Well, Catharsis takes the brain burn to a new level if you want. It can be taken to a brain-frying level, honestly. And while it uses the Yahtzee mechanisms in a pretty straightforward way, each hero plays so differently, and the creator has implemented so many small ways to adjust and expand gameplay that this is the deepest Yahtzee mechanism game I've ever encountered. In the world of Catharsis, a rip has been torn through multiple layers of existence, causing corruption and chaos and blending realities. As dangers appear, you choose a hero or two, and then you choose an adventure to run them through. They're called bosses, but while there is a boss at the end, usually you don't encounter them throughout the game, though that depends mission to mission. So it's not a boss battler in the style of Aeon's End or Primal, where they are always there to combat. Instead, you go on a quest of any number of events, traps, and monsters until you face that final big baddie. You lay out 6 ability cards per character, each having 2 powers. The abilities can do things like heal damage, prevent damage, manipulate dice, and attack directly. Honestly, the creator has been so creative with these abilities that while that's an okay summary, it's really impossible to get at the range of effects that they can create. You will be surprised every time you play at the different things your heroes can do and at the different ways they synergize. And to use those varied abilities, you roll your dice, you lock your dice, and you place the dice to use abilities. Then, once an ability has been used, you flip it over. Soon, your choices begin to run low, but there's a morale track, and you can reduce morale by 1 to flip all of your ability cards back over, making them usable again. Now, when you take damage, you also flip over cards, and if all of your cards are flipped, you have to start taking powers away. They don't refresh after that. Lose all your cards, and you lose the game. Morale runs out, and you lose the game. So you can see the tug of war that's going, because you want your abilities, you want to be able to take damage so that your abilities just flip, that they don't get taken away. But if you are constantly healing, running your morale track down, you can lose all the same. What is there about Catharsis that someone might not like? If you don't like Yahtzee mechanisms, this is a pretty pure take on them. But why don't you like Yahtzee? Is it the fear that the game will be too lucky? Well, if Yahtzee is at one end of that spectrum and Under Falling Skies is at the other end with almost no luck being involved, Catharsis falls between them, but I feel much closer to Under Falling Skies. It's not like in Under Falling Skies where literally every roll can be really advantageous if you think hard enough, but there is lots and lots of room for thinking in this game. Some people might just see all the dice rolling and be unable to look past it, and I don't know what else to say about that. Another thing is that especially as a solo player, there is a lot to think about here. There are a ton of possibilities and they all have long decision trees. You could feel overwhelmed. Like if you like chess puzzles and you like thinking, okay, if I move this piece and then I can move this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece and then back it up a couple and try another branch and then back it up all the way and try again. If you enjoy that, then you will probably find that fun. But when you hear Yahtzee mechanisms, you don't necessarily think about how much analysis paralysis this game can potentially give you if you are prone to it. Now, the only negative aspect of the game for me personally is that sometimes I found that it ran a bit long. I'm a naturally slow player. When presented with a lot of options, as described a moment ago, I especially go slow and explore them. And while I enjoy that, I don't actually feel like I have a lot of choice in the matter. I feel like I have to. And so sometimes if I am tired, I might turn to a different game. There's variance between the missions and how long it will take, and the creator has done a very good quality of life thing where they have listed the hero complexity, the hero solo ability, and then the mission difficulty, I think it would be cool to note which missions tend to run shorter and which tend to run longer for when you're tired, but want that catharsis experience in the shorter end of the time range. But we are already to what are people going to like about Catharsis, and this list is so much longer. I'm going to move away from the decision space that we were just discussing for a bit and then come back to it because I think that there's some lower hanging fruit that we can get out of the way really quickly. The art in this game is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my top favorite games to just stare at. The paintings are so full of character and energy, and with the big, like oversized cards, you really get to see that artwork. Likewise, the components are very nice. The cards are linen finished. The boards have, the track boards have metal inside with magnetic palm trackers. This feels very premium and keeps the trackers where they're supposed to be, even if you bump the table. I think even better than dual layered boards. It'd be kind of cool to see this decision more often. The dials, which were introduced in Divine Wrath and then are being continued in the second edition of Catharsis, are so cool that I have kept them out to use for other games. I'm a big fan of dials. I have a whole collection of them, but I really like these. They've got a third dial up at the top that you can use to track whatever, and they're also just really cool looking. Another thing that people will like about Catharsis is the way that each mission provides a real sense of adventure. If you watch my reviews and lists, you know that I like many games that are just toe-to-toe fights. Boss battlers are some of my favorite games. That's one of my favorite genres. They infiltrate like my top 5 lists constantly. But what I love here is the feeling of the adventure that you're going on that you get. There is a ton of variety between events, monsters, and traps. And for me, most importantly, not everything on the cards is negative. You don't dread flipping the next card because it feels like positive things pop up at just the right moment to save you. I really love this. I think it's something more game designers should do. Yes, this game is very difficult, but because there are occasional good things that happen in the deck, you feel excitement at flipping the next card instead of just bracing yourself for impact. Another thing that people will like, and if you keep track of my favorite games, you'll know that this is huge for me. Catharsis is a spreadsheet game. You can list out your heroes along one side, your missions along the other axis, and just mix and match to your heart's content. You grab your hero, you grab your boss deck, and you see what happens. Then you add another hero and use their duo power card to further synergize. And yes, it is possible to play 2 heroes at a time, even for me, though it does make my brain melt. Then you want to try that pair against another boss deck, so you just swap that out. Then you want to try a different hero, but they're not good at dealing damage. So you grab a champion that lets you, that assists you by dealing large amounts of damage and experience that synergy. Every time you get more content for this game, you get more and more unique plays out of everything that you already own for it. And besides the XY axes of hero and villain, you also have duo powers and champions, and I will come back to those things. The designers of this game seem to realize that they have a good thing going and are really supporting this game. And it's the sort where I would love to add bits at a time just to get more fresh plays. But when I say that they have a good thing going, I don't just mean that the game is finding a receptive audience, which it definitely is, but that you can just sense the fun being had by the designers. There is so much creativity and variety. Each mission is so different. Honestly, it's hard to convey, but I've rarely played a game where each mission feels so different from the last. It feels more like you're buying a bunch of smaller games to run your heroes through. Someone is clearly having a blast testing the boundaries of this system. This is especially possible due to the multiversal nature of the catastrophe that propelled all of these heroes on these adventures, because it allows for a huge narrative variety as well. The newest crowdfunding campaign has cyberpunk material, which will live totally comfortably beside traditional fantasy adventures and murder mysteries, and which will be solvable by both sorcerers or hero pilots driving mechs. And that brings us to the heroes. They also are so different. I learned, though, not to take up a new hero lightly. If I wanted to just have a chill evening, I needed to play a character I already knew, because each character is something to be learned and then mastered, which seems crazy because they're just a deck of 20 or so cards, but they play very differently. But that's a real treat when you both want to go to your shelf and play something that's pretty familiar, but also want to experience something new. It will take quite a few plays if you're choosing powers randomly to see everything that a character has. And it will take a lot more plays than that to see how all of their powers synergize together, because depending on the power combination that you draw, it can make a massive difference in how each character plays, just within one character. Then if you mix in another character, you mix in duo powers, you mix in the champions, it just goes on. If Catharsis lands with you, you are going to be getting unique experiences from it for many, many plays. And it's not just a surface level uniqueness. It feels rich because each time the decision space is made hugely different. If you like poring over a tableau looking for the optimal play, you will love how much Catharsis puts in front of you and says, have at it. This is one of those games that when you get into a tough situation, if you are willing to just sit and stare at everything in front of you and mentally combine all the different possibilities, you can almost always dig yourself out of problems that often seem impossible. This is a tough game. It is especially tough if you think you can go into it playing it easy breezy. It honestly astounds me how carefully balanced this stuff is, like how often I'm brought to the brink of just like one morale point left, because you're constantly being taken to the brink of that loss. And you're constantly looking at situations and saying, well, this is it, game over. But then you pour over your options and you get that light bulb moment of how you can make it out. For me, that is the most rewarding thing a game can provide. Those moments that take your hard work and make you feel smart, that allow you to claw your way out of certain defeat, that's like the pinnacle of board game play for me. What I don't understand is how it is possible, with so many moving parts that all work so differently. There is some sort of secret mathematics at play, probably something eldritch, which it's better to just not ask questions about. Finally, as a solo player, this is a game from designers that clearly respect us. The first edition of Catharsis isn't necessarily the ideal solo experience. It's far from bad, but just a lot of times it feels like it is not the expected mode of play. For example, some heroes kind of are more support characters that don't play well solo. But then you look at what they did with Divine Wrath, and they added champion cards, which allow you to replace a power on any hero with basically a sort of support character. A one-card assistant character. They will shore up your main character's weakness. So if you play a hero that has great defensive capabilities but can't do enough damage to get through a game alone easily, now you can add a one-card champion that does a bunch of damage. What a brilliant solution. Then in Divine Wrath, all of the heroes start receiving both a complexity and a solo ability rating. In the first edition of Catharsis, it felt like some of the missions, some of the like challenges present on the cards didn't scale well to solo. Like you took a lot of punishment if you were the only character there to receive the damage. Now, in Divine Wrath, it feels like it was designed where solo is just as likely an option as any, and probably more likely. When Catharsis was probably originally being developed, my just instinct is that solo wasn't nearly as big as it is now, and it wasn't thought of as much, but the game has kind of taken off in the solo community, and the designer has moved forward to make the game as solo friendly as possible. It's not just a gesture. So my final thought is that Catharsis hits just about every note for me. It has variety, a thinky crunchiness where you can really pour over it, and yet at the same time, the excitement that only comes from rolling dice and praying that you get what you need. While certainly, if I had put up a review just of first edition Catharsis, would have given it a very positive review. Because I have now played Divine Wrath, it is apparent how much smoother of an experience this game has been made for everyone, but especially for the solo player. And then that brings up the new second edition being crowdfunded. This is not just a reprinting. There are major quality of life improvements in Divine Wrath over first edition. There are keywords that are defined across a couple pages. Card design has been improved for clarity. Like I said, solo ability has been really considered and significantly improved. The morale rules in the first edition, things just got worse for you as you used morale to heal. In Divine Wrath, different things happen for every mission as you go down the morale track and hit different thresholds. In the Undercity Crab adventure, things ramp up similarly to like an Eric Lang game, because instead of taking damage at each morale interval like I was used to, I actually got benefits. I was not expecting that. From looking at the campaign page, All of these lessons have been brought back into the base game for second edition. Characters have been made more soloable, and you can read on the page about how they have been. Cards have been reworked for legibility, the original cards. Individual morale rules have been added to all of the core box missions. Keywords have been called out and defined for clarity. Basically, this is like the perfect example of why you should usually wait for the second edition of a game before you back it on crowdfunding. So Catharsis is pricey, but it provides a lot of value, a lot of unique plays, a lot of unique experiences. Also, I really feel like this is the sort of game crowdfunding was made for, and that the creators truly value the faith the community has put in them. They've listened to feedback, and they are also just clearly having an absolute blast. For myself, going forward, I am going to be very hesitant of crowdfunding with the state of the economy and US politics, but this is one of GameFound's stable pledges, which now means a lot to me, and makes me feel more comfortable about backing. So that's it from me. If you've tried Catharsis, let me know in the comments what you think of the experience. And if not, maybe just what is your favorite Yahtzee game? Are there any big proponents of Dice Throne? I have never been quite sure of where to jump in as a solo player. I know that there's Dice Throne Adventures, but I think that the X-Men tie-in is done differently. So yeah, let me know about that. If you want to hear me talk through the playthrough going on in the background, a weekly board game playthrough is the benefit of supporting me on Ko-fi. You'll find the link in the description. Okay, everybody, I am Jay Allen Riker, wishing you a great rest of your day and reminding you to keep playing solo.